I will introduce you the marginal propensity of consumption, marginal propensity of saving, and then we will see the supply side and the demand side, how it is affecting and changing the market structure. I don't know if your economics knowledge is enough to follow. If not, then please let me remind me. Then I will try to do something else. Okay, I will try to.
Yes. Hocam, actually, I have not such experience theoretically, but in practice, thanks to my managerial job before, somehow I had some deals with the economic issue.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Slides.
You are observing this. You are seeing, I think, the slides, isn't it? Are you able to see the slides?
Hocam, I see. It's okay for.
If you don't, then let me. If you don't see, let me. You are seeing.
Yes,
What
yes,
is
yes. It's okay.
You are seeing Keynesian economics, isn't it?
Keynesian economics. Yes, yes.
Yes. Actually, I am not going to give you the expenditure output model, but I will give you the marginal propensity of saving and marginal propensity of consumption, and then jump up to the closed economy. Introduce you the closed economy. Of course, I will give you the model and finish this. And next lecture, then I will give you the open economy in the same direction with this Keynesian approach. As you know from our last class, we have introduced the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And if you remember, the aggregate demand and aggregate supply shifts on the curves will create some changes on the equilibrium. And we are going to introduce you this expenditure output model, so-called the components of the GDP will be introduced to you. And the parameters which is affecting and changing this will be employed and applied to the graphic, and explain you on the equations how it is going to change and affect the model. Let's go again, as I said to you, this marginal propensity of saving and marginal propensity of consumption. As I have mentioned you, since you have your disposable income, you are going to either consume or save it. And usually in the economy, it is assumed 80% to 90% of this consumption is realized, and some 10 to 20% will be distributed to this saving account. Therefore, it is supposed that marginal propensity of saving plus marginal propensity of consumption is going to equal 1, which means $1 if you have in your pocket is going to be divided 2 parts, and 80% or let's say 90% of this will be distributed to the consumption, and 10% of this will be then in the saving account. Okay. In macroeconomics unit 3, yes, we will ultimately employ the aggregate demand and aggregate supply, as I mentioned to you, to explore how changes in the economy and the government policy affect the real GDP, so-called the output, employment, and the price level. We will start building our model by taking closer look at consumption, since it is the largest component of the GDP. If you remember the components of the GDP, Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. C is the consumption, I is the investment, G is the governmental expenditures, and NX is the net export, which means export minus import is supposed to be the international trade relations in the open economy will create some surplus or will cause some negative deficit account to the economy, because If the export is larger than import, then we have some surpluses and positive deficit, which means surplus in the deficit, sorry, in the current account. And if it is negative, then we have some deficit in the current account, which means negativity in the current account. And this is not good for the economy because, as you know, as much as you have some positive account and some surpluses in the economy, it's good for you and for the economy as a whole, for the nations, for increasing and enlarging the output. The aggregate demand, the schedule or curve that shows the total quantity of goods and services demanded, so-called purchased, at different price level, which we done in the last lecture. An aggregate supply schedule or curve showing the total quantity of goods and services supplied, produced at different price level. Let me GDP, the gross domestic product. Are you able to follow? Are you follow me?
Yes,
yes,
hocam,
okay,
no problem.
I think
Yes, hocam. Yes,
Fevzi
hocam.
Adanır,
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, Fevzi, thank you. You are Mete Adanır is something, or you have some relation with these people?
Yes, yes.
Are you from Limassol origin?
My father was from Limassol origin. I was born in Nicosia, but Mete Adanır was the cousin of mine, yes.
Who is your father?
We lost him
Is
about 30 years ago.
Is BRT?
Sorry?
Who is your father? He's working in BRT?
His name is Çelik.
Çelik.
Yes.
Not this one, not the one I know in the BRT television.
Yeah, you talked about Tunç, I guess.
Tunç.
No.
I don't know. Not Tunç. I don't know really. I forgot his name. I'm also from Limassol, and I know your family. Yes, please. Fevzi Adanır is your grandfather's name, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You are doing business.
Yes, I am taking education for my PhD, and I am also preparing for my accountant exams.
You are accountant.
Not yet. I am taking the exams. My goal is to become an accountant on the future, I hope.
Not you. So you do your PhD for what reason?
For delaying my military, to be honest.
You didn't attend to the military services.
Yes.
You want to postpone it. This is somehow interesting, but not good, I think, because some students taking this for, of course, these reasons. And okay, we will see what will happen. Okay. Are you good in economics? Because we are going a little bit deep in the economics. I hope you will understand the lectures. How is your knowledge? Did you get any economics foundation courses?
Yes, in my university times, I was taking some lectures based on economics in Eastern Mediterranean University.
Okay. What did you get? Which courses?
Introduction to economics, macroeconomics, like this.
Okay. Okay then. If it is not similar, and if you have also, as I told also Taptik, he is also in our university. If you have any problem with these applications, then you will inform me. Then I will flashback some cases to the other topics for being able to understand the classes. Okay, the GDP, as I said, the total market value of all final goods and services produced annually within the boundaries of the United States or in other countries. This is from the book, of course. And then Y is, as I said to you, is the output. The economists often use output and income interchangeable because whatever is spent on a product, output value, is also the income of the people producing it, isn't it? Because we have this circulation flow diagram, and it goes and comes again to you because you do produce something and you go and buy it again because you get these wages and salaries for this production operation process as a factors of production, part of the factors of production, and then you go again to the market for consuming or selling or buying these goods and services, and this becomes again revenue to the firms and income to the households for enlarging and increasing the economical activities in the market. The disposable income, the sum of the income of all the individuals in the economy after all taxes have been deducted and all the transfer payments have been added. The DI is the, of course, disposable income, which is YD. We represent sometimes with YD, is supposed to be the output minus taxes plus transfers, because disposable income is supposed to be YD, and it is the income which is in your hand, which is paid to you after the tax deduction. Disposable income is the income available for personal consumption, expenditures, and personal saving. As I said to you, this is the marginal propensity of saving and marginal propensity of consumption components of this YD, and some is distributed as you are observing when you are having this income and will be taken from the government as taxes, and for the other let's say pension scheme and other things, and the transfers will be then included again to your account. The saving disposable income not spent for consumer goods, which means either you are going to reduce your consumption for the saving purposes, or you will have some sufficient income for the saving account, and it must be at least 10% for you, for every person in the economy who are working and getting some salaries, getting some income, for being able to increase this account, because this is important for the economy as a whole, because we are able to enlarge and increase the investments. On the other hand, because saving account is also equal to the investment, and if the saving account is enough in the economy, then we are able to enlarge and increase our economic activities, because investment is the component of the GDP. And since we have sufficient capital in our economy, this will then help us to enlarge and increase the economic activities, which is the indication of the growth rate. As much as the GDP is the amount of the goods and services produced in a year, and if it is enlarged every year, not monetary value, but the real terms we are talking about, because monetary value can be increased because of inflation and some other reasons. Depreciation of the currency will cause some also increase on the GDP, because monetary value, nominal value, so-called, is enlarged as we are exercising currently in our economies. Everything becomes more higher in price in nominal terms, but in real terms, the purchasing power parity is decreasing. I don't know if you are aware of these differences in the economy. And this is not good for us, because only the nominal variables and nominal values are enlarging and increasing. And we are expecting to increase the purchasing power parity of the people and the real terms economy, which is the GDP enlargement every year. Otherwise, this is not good for the whole nation's welfare. So when we are going to look to this equation, the disposable income, either you're going to sum up this consumption plus saving will be then disposable income after this deduction of the taxes, or saving is equal to disposable income minus consumption. Either or it is going to be represented on the equation, and we can do the two things with our disposable income, spending or saving, as I said to you, and saving is the must or is expected to be realized in every economy. Unfortunately, in the emerging economies, this is not realized very easily because most of the people try to catch up the next months for surviving, and mostly we are in the negative in the economy. Of course, the people who are not able to save, then we are exercising some problems. The development and the enlargement of the economical activities will not realize sufficiently unless you are not getting any FDI or FPI investment. The foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment is not available, then you are exercising in the economy some negativities, and this is not good for the people's welfare and the nation's welfare. The average propensity to consume is, as it is given in the equation, is the consumption divided to the disposable income, and the fraction of disposable income that households plan to spend for consumers, goods and services is the average propensity to consume, and average propensity of consumption is the amount of the consumption which is divided to the disposable income. Will then give you this equation. The average propensity and of saving or to save is the opposite of this, the fraction of disposable income that households save. It is the savings purposes. Due to this reason, then the average propensity to save or savings is then equal to savings, amount of the savings that we are having will be divided to the disposable income. YD so-called. Disposable income is indicated with the YD in the equations. This is, of course, the explanation and theoretical indications and representations. The marginal propensity to to consume is again the amount of the differentiation. Now we are getting some differentiated amount. The last unit's contribution to the economies will be then represented with the marginal propensity to consumption, because every month what you are doing is then added to your account. Therefore, it is represented with the differentiation of the consumption will be divided to the differentiation of the disposable income from the former months. If you are going to estimate it for monthly, then you are going to use the monthly estimation, let's say from January to February, then the February consumption will be subtracted from the January, and the disposable income similarly realized as the February disposable income will be subtracted from the January. Then this will then give you the marginal propensity of consumption for the first two, so-called the January to February. The fraction of any change in the disposable income spent for consumers' goods is supposed to be the marginal propensity to consume, and as it is represented with this equation, is going to be calculated with this equation, and this is usually between 0 to 1, and if it is approaching to 1, it is not good, because this has meant you are not having any account for the saving, and if it is reduced and become a little bit more spaces for the saving, then it will become a little bit approaching to the 0. Therefore, approaching 1 is not good for the economy, because we are expecting that the people able to save some. And the marginal propensity of saving is the other components of this equation, so-called the marginal propensity saving plus marginal propensity of consumption is 1. Then the propensity to save is the fraction of any change in disposable income that households save, which has meant the marginal propensity of saving will then equal to the differentiation of the saving will be divided to the differentiation of the disposable income. Therefore, this is again, if you are considering the 2 months from January to February, then because we are in the March, if we are going to estimate it for the monthly, we can estimate it for the yearly or quarterly. Let's say monthly, then the disposable saving, then saving amount in February will be subtracted from the saving amount from the January, divided to this disposable income in the February will be subtracted from the disposable income from the January. Then the numerator and the denominator will then gives you the marginal propensity to saving. And again here, if this is approaching to the 1, this means you are having too much saving, and this, if this is approaching to the 0, then this means then you have some small amount of saving in this account, and this is usually more approaching to the 0 because people usually consume, not save. Therefore, 80%, 0.80, 0.90 is expected to have the consumption, and 0.1, 0.15, 0.18, 0.2 like this, then will be then marginal propensity to save. Therefore, this is the expected outcome of these equations that we are going to use in the Keynesian model. Now and later, then now think about it, why must average propensity to save plus average propensity to consumption is equal to 1, or the marginal propensity to consume or marginal propensity to save is equal to 1. Look at the saving slide. Going forward, understanding the terms and the symbols that follows will be helpful as we continue until the 3rd. Okay, we are going to, because we have done a little bit before, we are going to rewrite or restructure it to express it in the form of this propensities approach in the Keynesian model. The expected rate of returns is the amount of capital that you are putting into any investment or in anything. That is the, let's say, during this period of time, what will be the profit? What will be the expected outcome? The increase in profit a firm anticipates it will obtain by purchasing capital. The expressed as a percentage of the total cost of the investment activity is expected. Something else. Let me remove this, please. Okay. Now we have the expenditures, the consumption, investment, governmental expenditures, and NX. As I have mentioned, these are the components of the GDP. The consumption is the things that we are talking about, this marginal propensity of consume, and I is the saving, because I is expected to equal to save, and as much as the saving account is equal to let's say investment, is the similar propensity for this investment. And the governmental spending is the amount of the expenditures which is subjected to the government spending during this period. And NX or XN, so-called export minus import, as I mentioned to you in the beginning of the class, is supposed to be the as you know, this is in the open economy, because if you are excluding this net export, this will be then closed economy. We are going to introduce you, of course, after these slides, the closed economy, but here we are giving you the components of the GDP. From this point of view, we are representing the all components of the GDP, and as you are understanding, if this export is higher than import, it is good. It is the surplus, and it has meant there is a current account surplus, and if it is negative, then there is current account deficit. And this is the important part of the economy, because we are not only considering the exportation and importation, but we are also including to this current account the all monetary transactions, the all other components which is affecting and changing the amount of the capital in the market or in the economy. The aggregate expenditure, the total amount of the money which is spent on the final goods and services in a year, in the produced year. We are usually talking about the short term. And okay, then we stop here, because these things then I will flash back again to the following classes. Then I will go to the close economy to introduce you, because I don't want to go for, once again, because this I have explained to you, and there is no need to explain once again these things, because these things will be then introduce you with comprehensive models, with the applications for being able to understand and follow the lessons and understand the economic models a little bit better and deeper. Okay, I will upload the other file now. If you have any question, you ask me. If not, then I will close this. Do you have any question for this part?
No, Hocam, can you please to upload the system last hour lessons?
Yeah, I will.
Please, thank you very much. Have a nice day, Hocam. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to open the other part, because we are still continuing. Okay, I will open the other part.
It's okay for me, Hocam. It's okay.
Huh? What do you mean? It's okay. It's okay. You
I
understand?
don't have any questions. I don't have any questions.
Okay. It's good. Let me open the other part. Okay. Upon this, are you able to see this? Close economy now. Or you didn't?
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
You see?
Yes. We see.
Okay. Now the things that we have done is going to be a little bit deeper to explain you how this is realized in closed economy, of course. The closed economy, as I mentioned to you, we are excluding the NX here. How the real interest rate, because we will go step by step for being able to understand the model, okay, the Keynesian model, the expenditure output model. How the real interest rate keeps the good market in equilibrium. Y is equal to C plus I plus G. Now we are adding here the R. R is the real term interest rate, which means we are using some investment and saving capitals with the market, which we consider the interest rate, isn't it? Therefore, we add the model to the R, which is the real interest rate, not the nominal terms, but real terms. And the model background, when we flash back to our background, this model is closed in the sense that there are no exports or imports in the model. And the model does not include government tax and government expenditure. And if the model is output out of equilibrium, it is the changing real interest rate that returns the model to equilibrium. So when we look to the model and we are questioning what will happen if this is changing, if this interest rate is affecting and changing the parameters. Let's see what will happen. If the interest rate, as you are observing, Y now is supposed to be larger than or bigger than the C plus I plus G. If it is like this, which means the supply is more than demand in the equation, then interest rate is expected to decrease by using these fiscal policies, these open market operations, the contractional money policy, expansionary money policy, discount rate, and some others. Reserve requirements is going to be employed by the central bank for reducing and balancing the economy, because you are observing supply is now more than demand, which means we are above the equilibrium. When you are above the equilibrium, you are having problem. You are having overproduction. The surplus is not good because it is causing too much to the economy. From this point of view, the interest rate is expected to decrease to increase the money supply. And when the money supply is enlarged, then the people's capacity or capability will then become more, because the liquidity in the system will become an enlarge and increase the amount of the circulated capital and the MS. And this will then affect and change the economy towards to the equilibrium again. And this will then brings the market to the equilibrium and supply and demand, which means the left and right side of these equations will become again to the equilibrium position, to the equity. In the opposite case, where the supply is less than consumption plus investment, which is the, let's say, affected or change regarding to the real interest rate, plus the GDP, so plus the governmental expenditures, interest rate is expected to increase to reduce money supply. And when it is done, then this will then cause some decrease on the investment, and until to the equilibrium, then this will then reach equilibrium again, as I mentioned to you, in the upper position where it was higher. When we are looking to this equation, the left side of the goods market represents the supply, as I already mentioned, and the right side is the demand, as with the consumption, investment. These are the things that we are using, consuming, or the entrepreneur using for their activities, and the public sector using for their, let's say, activities, spendings, and their goods and services, which is used both and employed for the services done by the people in the economy or in the government. When we are looking to the supply side of this equation, we are understanding, we are concentrating to the Y, isn't it? You see the Y, the output, the GDP on the left side, as it is written here, you see. This is long run model, so output Y is determined by factors input. As you know, the equation, the let's say production function, Y, we are having here only the two factors model. This is the growth model. Y is equal to, we have to put here, for example, before the functions A, which is the available technology, normal conditions we have in economy, the technology that we are using to produce some goods and services. Therefore, the left side, as you see here, we are having the supply, and it is supposed to be the production will be dependent to the A, available technology is the function of the capital and labor. We are considering the two-dimensional model, and we are having two, let's say, factors for enlarging and increasing our economic activities. We begin with the production function as it is given here, and I add here also imaginary the A in front of the, or after the equity, we add the A for the technology. We begin with this model, and for simplicity, we assume K is fixed and allow labor to, capital is supposed to be fixed. We don't consider capital in the upper graph, and we suppose the labor is changing. And when you look to this graph on the upper part of the equation, the change in the output, as you need the marginal propensity of, marginal productivity of labor, will then gives you the change in the production, because as much as you are increasing the labor, it is expected, because K is fixed, which means the capital is fixed, and we suppose only the labor is changing. And from this point of view, marginal product or productivity of labor, which is given on the delta Y over delta L, or change in Y to divided to the change in L, or delta Y to delta L, is the productivity of labor in a given model. And as you are observing, we consider the 2 points, which is not represented on the graph, but it is indicated with the right angle on the curve of this production function. And change in labor has meant an increase in the output, isn't it? When you are looking, we are moving, let's say, from the lower part of the labor to the upper part to the labor to the second part or to the next term labor. And when you move and add some more labor to the economy, this will cause some more output, as you are observing on the graph. This is diminishing marginal returns of the labor employee because, as you know, the production function is a curve, inversely U-shaped curve. It goes up, reaching to the optimum, maximum point, and then goes to negativity. Therefore, up to the optimal or maximum point, which is not indicated here, where it is probably the highest point, it is indicated here. You can enlarge and increase the economy, or you can enlarge and increase the production function, and you can enlarge and increase the labor for this given model where capital is fixed. And after this, then you are expecting there will be a negativity for the production function. And you are observing this diminishing marginal returns comes from the figures shape, because as much as you are increasing the labor, as you are observing, the production function becomes more flatter if you are observing on the graph. And this has meant you enlarge the chain, you enlarge the labor, let's say labor amount, which is enlarged periodically, same, constant, but the amount of the output is diminishing because every month or every year you are increasing the output is going to reduce while the labor is stable, constant, and not changing. Of course, it is changing, but similar amount of changes realized every month or every year, but the amount of the output is decreasing, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and it becomes to the somehow zero, not changing when you are adding more labor, more employee to the economy or to the, let's say, business. This will not affect and change anymore the production function. You are understanding, I think, isn't it? Therefore, this is very important to know. We have to stop until the optimal point where you are having and reaching to the maximum for this production function. And as you are observing here, this marginal return to labor can be represented below given equation. The marginal productivity of labor is equal to the function of capital L plus 1, which is the additional 1 unit, minus the former period, as I mentioned to you, FKL, isn't it? This is the additional units that I'm going to represent on the graph. Will then affect and change this graph and shift the economy a little bit higher, but every time this increase on the labor will cause some diminishing amount of increase on the production function or on the output. The slope of this function is the marginal product of labor, as I have mentioned here, the delta y divided to delta L, or change in y divided to change in L, will give you the marginal productivity of labor, which is very important estimation for the economies, for the firms, for the institutions, for being able to determine whether you are doing good or not, because productivity is the most important part of the economy, which is increasing and enlarging the, let's say, surplus in the economy, or the production capacity in the economy. The ability of the people to contribute to the economy must be higher than the others. For example, in China, people are working for $50, for $100 in Russia, in emerging economies, in Turkey, for example, in Cyprus. We are having so many capital and so many labor which is not effectively used in the economy. And because of this, we are employing people with the minimum wages. We are employing people with lower than the minimum wages because they are contributing less than expected, let's say, performance, because of their know-how, because of their innovative contribution, or because of their productivity. And from this point of view, when we are comparing China and Germany, for example, the people's contribution in China, you know, there are too many, the two people are crowded and there are too many people, and they are holding the minimum wage very low, $50, $100 for distributing this to the whole people. That's the reason in China production operation process is very cheap, because labor is very cheap, which is the very important components of the production function. And from this point of view, in China, you are employing 100 people and you are paying $50, and you pay 5,000, let's say, dollar or euro per month for these 100 people, and perform your, let's say, business. And in Germany, you employ 5 people and pay them, let's say, I said $100, $50, you pay $500, and this will then enlarge and increase the economic activities more than, let's say, Chinese people, which is very contributive, because the know-how of these people is more than these Chinese employees, and this is the reason why the productivity in Germany always higher than the other countries, and the surplus, the GDP is always in the second runner, third runner in the world economies, or the fifth runner, comparing to these larger economies such as China and the others. These emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, they are having too many people, and they are employing too many people for doing this business, because with these small wages and little payments realized these in the economy. And of course, the advantage of these Chinese economies, they are having their businesses in their own firm, in their own company, and they are holding the cost lower. And this is good because they are able to sell it cheaper. Even if the quality is not very high, they are becoming very competitive. As you know, Mr. Pound and some other Chinese, Chinatown, Chinese, let's say, how you call, bazaar, these are the cheapest production operation process goods and services offered, and this is the reason they are not considering the quality and the standards. They are considering the mass production, so-called the economies of scale, which means the mass production always get too much, let's say, percentage from the whole market, and this will then enlarge and increase the profit also. But from this point of view, when you look to the Germany or France or other developed nations, they are having, let's say, 5 units or 100 units per day or per month, but they are selling with the higher prices. As you know, a Mercedes is very expensive, $50,000, $60,000, but Asian cars are very cheap, 8,000, 10,000, 15,000 somehow. Therefore, this is because of this, or some others, bags, or some other households that we are buying from these China bazaars, and these shops coming from China are few dollars. And when you are buying some Louis Vuitton and some other expensive products, which is produced per day 1 or 2 units or 10 units, then will become very expensive because of the quality or because of the trade mark, isn't it? These brand products become very popular because of their quality, because of their brand names that is very popular in the world. Due to this reason, this is the important, let's say, point for reminding you, diminishing marginal returns to labor is important, but it is more important for becoming productive. Therefore, you are not becoming enlarging and popular your product in the world, as much as you are expanding to the whole market, it is important to produce high quality, high standards, and the price will then become more high, and then the profit rate will also become more than the expected other products in the market. Therefore, this supply side is very important to consider with the productivity. You have to increase and enlarge your products regarding to this aspect. And when we are looking to the similar approach for the capital, then we assume labor is fixed in the below part of the graph. Then you are observing the change in output, changing capital now, of course, because labor is fixed, supposed to be, and capital is changing. And suppose every month you are investing 1,000 unit, and every 1,000 unit per month you are investing to this firm or company will create some output, but this is also similar, because whether it is output considered regarding to the labor or the capital, you are becoming affected from the market structure also. Therefore, this productivity is coming to the certain points because of the know-how, because of the innovation, technology, the standards. You investing similar capital and expecting to enlarge same amount as you are starting from the let's say startup business to the market. But even if it is the same amount of capital invested, this is still same. The output will become smaller. This is then the again diminishing marginal returns to capital now, because as much as you are increasing the amount of the capital per month, same amount but increasing amount, you are enlarging your business. This will then reduce again, and increasing but reducing amount of increase of output will be realized, and this is then reaching to the optimal point. Therefore, we have to find the best possible combination of these two components for producing profitable, let's say, goods and services regarding to this business. What is expected? How many? Because some businesses becomes boom exploded, and everybody enjoy to jump up to the business because of this startup. They are seeing, oh, they are profiting, they are enlarging, but suddenly they are disappearing, because 80% of these startup businesses, because of this problem, bankrupt. They are not able to survive because they are not able to stop. They don't know where to stop. They don't calculate their profit properly. The cost benefit analysis is very important from this point of view. And if you go to the graphical representation on the three-dimensional, let's say, figure, if we choose to combine these images, we will get a surface with output on the vertical axis and capital labor on the other axis. As you are observing, it is increasing again, but then will then becomes decreasing amount at the end. As you see on the axis X and Y, we put the labor, and on the above we put the capital, and as you see, it is somehow capital and labor together. When it is employed, then it is shown on the graph. It shows that it goes somehow up and then will comes again to the down, because of the labor and capital is not contributing sufficiently to the output. And it goes up, then after this, then as you see the output on the vertical axis, then it will go, then after this reaching point, imagine the production function, it will then start again to goes down. This is then the case. A cross section of the surface will provide us with the two-dimensional production function, and as you see, it is a little bit thicker represented because of this three-dimensional representation on the graphic. And when we go into this graph with the, as you see, we are putting here now the wages and the labor to see how it is affecting and changing each other. Now we have the real wages, of course, because as you see, when we are dividing the wages, the nominal wages to the prices, will then gives you the real wages. The factor demand is the marginal product of the factor, and labor demand, for example, is defined as the marginal product to labor. The real wage represented, as I mentioned to you, W divided to P, and is the real price of labor, where V or W is the nominal wage and P is the price are determined exogenously. To determine the optimal amount of labor, firms add L unit to the, as I said to you, marginal productivity to labor, then will represent with the W divided to price, which is the productivity again. This will then give you the contribution to the labor in the, let's say, resources and the other materials that you are adding to the economy regarding to the capital and regarding to the, let's say, monetary amounts. This is the profit maximization process that ultimately determines output, as it is represented here. Either the wages is going to be decreased. This is the diminishing returns again, as you are observing here. As much as the real wages increase, the marginal productivity labor is for the demand is, of course, is going to reduce, and vice versa is the same for the wages. Either or, you're going to reduce it or increase it for increasing the productivity. And it is, of course, because of the shape of this curve, it is the convex to the origin. And the capital also similarly represented on the same dimension and same direction. As much as the rental rent for the capital is going down, the marginal productivity to capital is expected to enlarge and increase. The process is exactly the same as I mentioned to you for the capital that I have mentioned to you. But now we are dividing the rent to the price, not the wages. Wages will be then divided to the price, and for the labor, for the people we employ, and for the capital, then we are dividing this real interest to the price again for getting the real terms in the economy. The building the goods market model. Now the demand side, we are looking to the right side. We begin with the consumption, investment, the governmental expenditures. As I mentioned to you, net export are not included in the closed economy because I mentioned that we are concentrating to the closed economy. And the model, as I mentioned to you, is the Y is equal to F AFKL, which means the Y output is the function of the capital labor with the available technology, which is not represented on the graphic, but I added here A. Before F, we have A, and this is then the technology which is going to be used for the innovative market structure and production operation process that you are using for the know-how. Now, given the equation, Y is then C plus I plus R plus G. And as you are understanding to the negativity, demand side is negative because the relationship between the output and the prices, there is a negative combination or inverse relationship. And in a given saving rate, let's say S, as I mentioned to you, is supposed to be also investment. And then now we are supposing C plus S is 1, and if you add to the other side of the equation, will become then 1 minus S. Therefore, consumption will become then 1 minus S is the marginal propensity to consume, and this will then employ and upload to the model with the taxes. As you remember that I have mentioned to you, for the consumption, we are using also some deduction from the disposable income. Therefore, we are reducing from the output or so-called disposable or the income, the disposable income. For reaching to disposable income, we have to subtract the taxes. This will then give you the function, the consumption function, so-called, is the C is the intercept, is in the bracket Y minus T, where the taxes is deducted or reduced. And R is the real interest rate. Investment and the real interest rate have a negative relationship, so the investment is in the let's say relationship between real interest rate, the negative slope, as I mentioned to you, because of this demand. And as R increases, investment supposed to be decreases, and T is the amount of the tax collected, and from this we will get then the equation again. If we're going to rearrange it, then y is equal to c in bracket y minus t because of this disposable income, plus I in the real term, R, which means the interest rate, is going to be divided to the price plus governmental expenditures, then rearranging again it. Then we have then y minus c, because this is then the output will be then subtracted from the disposable income, which is the tax deduction, is the intercept, or so-called the autonomous consumption. Then will gives you, which is not represented here, then will gives you the slope of this consumption curve. Then you're gonna subtract it from the governmental expenditures. Then this all will gives you the investment, because on the equation we are representing the savings and investment, which is supposed to be equally distributed. Saving account is also represented with the investment, as you know. Then the good market equilibrium, the loanable fund market, we are here. Then the R is the real interest rate, and S or I is the investment and saving. As you know, we said in the closed economy again, the model long run equilibrium occurs at the point where y is equal to c y minus t, as again disposable income, plus I as in the real terms interest rate, plus g, and that if the system is out of the equilibrium, then R must change to equilibrate the system. Recall that S is equal to I, where the saving is equal to investment, is just a rearrangement of the goods market into saving and the investment components. This rearrangement is called the loanable fund market, as it is represented on the graph. And as you see, the saving account is not affected, is represented as it is because of this given model. And if the loanable market is out of equilibrium, then the interest rate adjusts to the equilibria, which in turn ensures that the good market is in equilibrium, as you are observing, where the saving and investment intersect each other at R star, where the saving, as I mentioned to you, as much as we are talking about the real interest rate, which means nominal interest rate is not considered, because if you remember from your former classes, the Fisher equation, if you know the Fisher equation, says real interest rate is the nominal interest rate minus inflation. And if the nominal interest rate is equal to the real inflation, this has meant we have zero interest. We have at least maintaining the capital that we invested or we save in the loanable market. And from this point of view, as much as you are reducing this real interest rate to the star, point star, R star, then you are reaching to the saving and investment where the real terms realize. Because if the interest rate is too high, you are not able to borrow, because investors or entrepreneurs are not able to borrow at higher prices, at higher rates, at higher interest rates. And due to this reason, we are expecting that this interest rate will shift some reasonable level to reach up to the, let's say, borrowers or the entrepreneurs able to react and respond to these changes in the economy. That's the reason you are not able to increase the interest rate too much, as much as you are expecting for the savers either, because when you are reducing or when you are increasing the nominal interest rate to the higher levels, you know, people are not able to borrow, because savers interest rate usually are below the borrowers or entrepreneurs interest rate. And from this point of view, if this is too high, then the investors, where it is shown here, it is not affected from these changes, because it is supposed we are in the closed economy and not affected from the other parameters which is affecting and changing the, let's say, loanable markets. And if it is so, then if you have some stable and constant saving account, which is vertical and parallel to the interest rate, then investment is affected and change and goes down until to the star, where the R star means the real interest rate will becomes intersect to the investment. And at that point, we are having the equilibrium, and this means then the people borrowing and saving are becoming satisfied from the market structure. And as you see, the market transition is realized. There are various effects which can enter the model and change either saving or investment, leading to the change in the real interest rate, as you are observing here. Things on the graph, things that might shift saving includes changing the output tax government expenses to the marginal propensity to consumption. Things that might shift include change in tax policies that affect investment or home buying, investment incentives, or perhaps technological innovations that once they are developed, firms must invest into stay in the market. All these changes require to different interest rate to equilibrium or equilibrate the market. As you are observing, it shifts as much as you are shifting up and down on the real interest rate, and this will then affect and change also the saving capital to the higher level. And when it is enlarged and increased, as you are observing, then the investment becomes a little bit lower. You enlarge now this and increase it, but this is then affected and changed to the lower level. And if this is then happens, and it is expected that shift the let's say investment to the upper level because of this reduction, because everybody demand because of this lower interest rate, lower real interest rate, and this will then in the seasonal deviation shift again to the upper level, and this will then becomes this demand on the demand is also the borrowers, and borrowers are the entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are the investors. When this is shifted to the upper level, this is showing you, as you are observing, the interest rate will then shift again upper level, then cause some reduction and somehow balancing or maintaining the expected, let's say, activities, or maybe reduce some activities in the economy. Conclusion for this class, for this interpretation: the closed economy model is a simple static model that allows us to see how the real interest rate adjusts to keep equilibrium in the loanable fund markets, which implies equilibrium in the good markets. And we also see how various exogenous shocks can affect either saving or investment, and therefore leads to a different real interest rate that equilibrates the good markets. And as I said to you, this was the closed economy presentation. If you do have any question, please ask me. If you don't, then I will stop here, because I have another class at 19:30. Maybe a little bit, 10 minutes, I can shift it. Do you have any question, please?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
we will look into by ourselves.
Huh? What was it?
I don't have any questions, Hocam. Yes.
Okay. I hope
Thank
you are
you.
able to understand and you're able to follow me. I'm trying to explain comprehensively for being able to understand. I hope you are satisfied.
Yes, Hocam, satisfied. But please, in order to be most aware about, just material I am asking to.
I will upload.
Yeah. Okay, Hocam. Thank you very much.
See you then next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hocam. Bye-bye.
See you, Hocam. Bye-bye.
Bye.